were they doing for her that you could see happening while she was receiving treatment?
Okay, thank you.
And she did.
Okay, thank you. To your knowledge, was she having breathing issues?
When she exerted herself. And that had just started recently.
Okay, so when you say recently, could you give us some dating of the problem?
Like maybe a week, it had started to, she'd said more about it.
Okay, all right. And was there a time while she was in the hospital that it was decided that a move would be advisable?
Yes. Dr. Deborah, she came to me and said that because her oxygen had been depleted, she felt that if she took her down to ICU step down, she would get, her lungs would get a break because it'd be a more air-infused oxygen. I'm not quite sure that part, but that she would, up here it was like 6-to-1 nurse-wise, and down there it'd be 1-to-1, and she felt that if she did that, she would get home a lot sooner.
Okay, ma'am, you gotta help me out. I had to open up the doors because I'm afraid it's gonna get hot in here. So you gotta give a little bit more volume.
Okay,
I know
sorry.
Some of the jurors appear to be struggling to hear you.
Did everybody hear the rest?
Okay.
Okay.
I just saw people leaning forward.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Was more advanced support suggested for your mom?
I'm sorry?
Was more advanced support suggested?
No.
What happened next?
She was moved down to ICU, and it was the evening of the 19th, I believe. I'm not 100% sure because it was after we were gone. And so on the 20th, I went to visit her in the ICU. I probably got there about 9:30 or something. And my dad and my aunt and uncle were there. And my dad and my aunt left to go downstairs to get something to drink or whatever. And my uncle and I were left in there. And when I walked in, my Uncle Jim said, "She's not been alert today. She's just not been doing much." And I said, "Oh, well, Mom must have recognized my voice because she opened her eyes and we talked, and she had a special name for me, and she said that to me. And then I just asked her how I was feeling, and she just like nodded. She only had the nose thing in at that point in ICU, and she said she was hot and her back was hurting, so I got a washcloth off of the sink back in the corner of the room, wet it with cold water, and I wiped her forehead and wiped her face and her neck, the back of her neck, and put it cold on the back of her neck for a while. And then I massaged her legs or massaged her back area, neck area a little bit because that was hurting her. And she wanted to lay back a little bit more, and I asked somebody if she could, and they said no because they had to keep her in that position to keep her oxygen level up. If she laid down further, it would not help her oxygen level. And I put lotion on her legs and lotion on her arms, and her lips looked very dry, and I had chapstick in my purse, Blistex. I put that on her lips, and she was saying how thirsty she was, and so I don't know who I asked. It was a female. I don't know if she was a nurse or not, and I asked if she could have some water, and she told me no, that it would put pressure on her lungs. And I said, but she's so thirsty, she's literally begging for water. And so my uncle spoke up and said, can she have ice chips? And she kind of smiled and like, yeah, I know, that's water. I said, how about swabs? Could you give her some swabs? So she did bring in swabs down in a glass of water, and she put them in my mom's mouth, and she goes, wow, she must have been thirsty. She's really sucking on this. And so then she left them with me, and I continued to let Mom do that. And it wasn't explained to me why she couldn't have laid back a little bit more to give her back a rest. They just said that it would deplete her oxygen, so.
Okay. And then how long did you stay for that
I
visit?
left I left a little bit after 4:30.
Okay.
By that time, my nephew Brian had arrived, and when he went up to her bedside, "How you doing, Mima?" And she said, "Okay, Brian." And then sometime in that time, my nephew Brent from Florida called and talked to her on the phone.
Okay. And who was there at the hospital with her when you left?
My dad and my dad was still there.
Okay. Anybody else?
No, my daughter arrived later, but my dad was there by himself.
Was your mom ventilated?
No, she just had the nostril. No, because I would have never moved a mask or anything to be able to put chapstick on her lips.
When was the last time you talked to your mom?
That day, when I left at 4:30. When I left at 4:30, I'd already told her goodbye, but she was having stomach pain, and she pulled herself up by the side rails of the bed and was saying how bad her stomach was hurting her, the pain in her stomach was. And I left, my nephew and I left then.
Okay.
I'd
And
already seen her through that once.
What did you do then?
Went home. Actually, I couldn't find my car in the parking garage. My husband had to come and get me. And so went home, and my daughter and my dad were there. And when they left about 8:35, my daughter called me and told me that they were putting Mom on a ventilator. And she and my dad were there when that happened, and they spoke to my 3 different women were in there. They had put the mask on her by then, and her face was very thin, and they were having trouble adjusting the mask. As a matter of fact, her face was very bruised. Even in her coffin, her face was, the makeup couldn't hide the bruises on her face because of adjusting that mask. And one of the 3 women, this is told by my father and my daughter, I wasn't there.
Objection, then, Your Honor.
Okay, let's
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah. Did there come a time when you found out that your mom went on a ventilator?
Yes, my daughter called me after they left the hospital that night and said that they had told, one of the females there had told her that we think you'd be better if you were on a ventilator. And so she was awake.
Okay. Did you have any end-of-life or critical care conversations with your mother before her hospitalization?
Yes, we had in a way, but not, just that she would never ever want to live on a ventilator. That's about.
And what is your interpretation of that?
Well, there is a person that would have been my age, and she was younger, and I will never forget her name or anything, but Karen Ann Quinlan, she overdosed with alcohol and Valium and was in a coma for years and years and years, and really was just living like that. And Mom and I talked about that before. Just, who's going to want to be like that forever?
Okay. Did you on that day and that evening receive an additional phone call with respect to your mother?
I received a phone call from my dad about 9:15, which would have been 35 minutes after they left the hospital, 40 minutes. And he said that Dr. Husel had wanted the family to come to my mom's bedside because she wasn't doing well.
What did you find? Did you go to the hospital?
Oh, absolutely. We were there by about 25 till. We were the first, my husband and I were the first ones there.
What did you find when you got to the hospital?
My husband slid back the curtain and we walked in, and somebody was putting something in my mom's IV. Dr. Husel was. And I remember looking up the monitors. The monitors weren't on because I had watched her oxygen level be anywhere from like 86 to 72 to 60. I had watched it, and I looked up there to see it, and I looked up there to see her blood pressure, and nothing was on. There were IV bags hanging on the IV tree, but they were not connected to her. A syringe was going in her arm, in her elbow.
And who was applying that syringe?
Dr. Husel.
And how do you know it was Dr. Husel?
Well, first of all, I assumed because that's who had called us to the hospital, but once it came out that he was the doctor, he had a mask on and I recognized his eyes, and he has a tribal tattoo on his right bicep, and the right side of him was towards us.
Okay. Do you recognize him here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Is he seated over in the defense
Yes.
table? Okay. Did you have a conversation with William Husel?
Not until, he kept asking if all the family was there, and they weren't there yet, and kept asking. So when they finally, he asked if everybody was there, and I said yes. There were 11 of us there. And he said, your mom is a very sick lady. And I remember thinking that was kind of odd because my dad was there, and he used the word mom. And he said, she has pneumonia, MRSA. That was the first we'd heard of MRSA. I apologize, I take that back. We were told the morning of the 20th that she had MRSA. She did not have it prior to that. She had pneumonia, she had MRSA, her organs, she had a very severe stomach infection, and her organs were starting to shut down, and that she was brain dead.
Was your dad there?
Yes.
Was your dad her legal representative?
Yes, I assume, but I also had power of attorney.
Okay.
But he was illegal. I would have not overstepped my dad.
Okay. Did Dr. Husel address the family with regard to decision-making in her behalf?
Once we heard, first of all, we were all in a state of shock that we were even there, because 3 hours earlier, my mom wanted my daughter to put lipstick on her and eyebrow pencil on her. So that was, and she was talking when they talked to her about putting her on the ventilator. So we were all in a state of shock. All we knew that she had pneumonia, and she had gone in for intermittent stomach pains and short of breath. The family literally was in a state of shock when we were told she was brain dead, because how'd we get there? How'd that happen? And I remember my dad immediately saying, oh, well, she wouldn't want to be a vegetable. And that term, I do not like that term to be used. And so then I spoke up and said, well, and as I said, we needed to make a decision as a family what we wanted to do.
Who made that decision?
The family.
Who communicated it?
Well, I had a concern that this had nothing to do with the dying process or anything, but my mom, for some reason, she was a great swimmer, but for some reason she always feared smothering or suffocating, and I brought that up, and I asked if when we had the ventilator removed, would she had that sensation. And my brother, Bo, repeated what I said. And Dr. Husel said no, that she wouldn't feel anything.
Were you advised what or how much medication would be given to her?
No.
What do you know about your mom's pain control at home?
Like I said, with her back, she was always in a lot of pain, but it never ever slowed her down or stopped her. The only time I ever knew her to use a walker and a wheelchair was after she had knee surgery and hip surgery.
Do you want to approach? We need to approach her.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, give us a couple minutes. Ms. Grubb?
We just need to make it 33.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Just trying to put a sticker on a small item. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm approaching the witness with a small pill bottle labeled State's Exhibit 33.
Yes,
Do you recognize that?
yes, it's my mom's prescription bottle for 15 milligrams of morphine.
Where did that bottle come from?
My mom's house,
Who gave, how'd you get it?
my dad gave it to me.
Okay. And I know the script is awfully small. Can you find a date on there?
Eleven 2018.
And what day did your mom die?
11/20/18.
And what does the prescription say on the label that it's for?
Morphine, SULER, 15 milligrams, tab, MAL. Quantity 60. Gregory Runzer is her doctor. Law prohibits refills, and flu shots are now available.
Thank you. What did you know about your mom's pain control at the hospital?
In the hospital, other than when she would complain about her intermittent stomach pain, I don't know that she was in any pain.
Okay. What were you led to believe, if anything, about what she would feel at the end of life?
Like I said, we had that concern. It wasn't her major fear in life. Her major fear in life was heights, but she did have a concern about the smothering, suffocating, and we were told she wouldn't know that the vent was even coming out. My assumption, nothing was explained to us, but my assumption was,
Objection, Your Honor, beyond,
Okay.
not responsive at this point.
Well, and the assumption, let's lay a foundation for it.
Was there a discussion about what would happen after the ventilator came out?
no.
Ms. Grubb, would you pick up that bottle, please?
Sure. Sorry.
No, I actually had a question to the nurse that was in there. Dr. Husel had on teal-colored scrubs, and the nurse had on light blue-colored scrubs. And he was to my right somehow. I'm not sure where he came from. And I said, if there's no hope, why were you... If there's nothing you can do, if there's no hope, why was something being put in her arm when we walked in? And he said, oh, we never stopped trying.
What happened after the discussion about withdrawing care?
Well, we talked about it as a family, and considering that none of us are medical experts, and if a doctor tells you that your loved one's brain dead, I had no idea whatsoever why you would doubt him, because they're the educated one. So we accepted that, and as a family, we decided to have the vent removed.
And where did you go then?
Well, Dr. Husel was in there the whole time we were discussing this as a family. And then or I'm not sure if it was him or not, that I apologize for, said that we...
Objection, Your Honor.
You
So I'm
can't.
not- Which is
Okay.
not sure.
Sustained. Disregard to what someone said.
Did you go to the waiting room then?
We were asked to leave the room, and we went out, and there was like a little corridor, a hall. There was no waiting room.
Okay. And what happened out in the hall?
I don't really think we even talked, because we were still all in a state of shock. It's just nothing any of us thought would happen. We were just still like, how did it get here? How did it come to this?
Was there a time when the family was allowed to go back into the room?
Yes, we were permitted to go back in, and it had been removed.
When you say it had been removed, what are you talking about?
The vent has been taken out of her throat.
Anything else?
She was,
What else did you see?
well, we all felt that she was gone at that time, but we stayed in there as a family just to be with her for a little while. I remember, put my head on her chest, and I remember rubbing her hands. And we stayed, I'm not sure how long we stayed in there, but she was gone when we walked back in. And when we finally did all leave, I walked outside to that little quarter area, and my nephew was there. And he'd walked out earlier, and I just looked at him and said, she's gone. And Dr. Husel looked at me and said, what? And I said, she's gone. He looked up at a clock on the wall. He was kind of like in a little kitchenette type doorway, and we were in the corridor. And he looked up at the wall and called time of death. And we were still there as a family. And I thought when somebody called time of death, they would have to go in and check for a pulse, listen for a heartbeat. The monitor wasn't on, so we would have not, seen anything on that. But he called time of death from out there, which she'd actually died a lot earlier because we were in there with her and took our time as a family to spend the last few minutes we had with her, even though she didn't know we were there.
Okay, so when you say Dr. Husel was standing, was he close to any monitors or screens?
I don't know. I don't know. His back was to a door, so he was facing out to where we were all. There wasn't a monitor within our view.
Okay. Did there come a time that you were contacted by the hospital?
I was not
after your mom's
contacted.
death?
I personally was not contacted. My father received a call sometime after Christmas. And then my father went,
Okay, relax for a second.
sorry.
How did you find out that there was a potential issue with your mom's passing?
My dad came to the house and told us.
Objection, Your Honor, as to what her dad told him.
You can't say exactly what he
Okay,
said.
rephrase the question.
Are you going to strike the answer that he told her?
Well, she didn't get the answer all the way out. He didn't say what she said yet.
Okay.
So let's rephrase.
Was there a time when you came to learn that the hospital had provided information to you or the public about a dosing issue in the ICU in Mount Carmel West?
I'm not sure how to answer that.
Okay.
The hospital had called my dad and told my dad.
Objection, what they told her dad, Your Honor.
Okay, what was your understanding of that situation?
My understanding was,
Without saying who said what.
okay, my understanding was that,
Your Honor, I still think it's based on hearsay. Or what her father
Well,
told her.
her understanding is not hearsay. It's being offered for something other than the truth, so proceed on.
my understanding was that my mom had been overdosed.
Thank you. Who is the representative for your mother's estate?
My dad.
Do you know whether or not anybody in the family has secured civil counsel?
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor. That would conclude our direct examination, Your Honor.
Ms. Menashe,
Thanks,
Cross?
Bev. Ms. Menashe should have some questions for you.
Ms. Grubb, why don't you go ahead and take that off there?
Yes. I'm just offering it to Diane.
Oh.
No, okay.
Good afternoon, Diane Menashe on behalf of Dr. Husel. That was your understanding. Just want to make sure of a few things. First of all, I think you've attended every day of this trial, is that right?
Except one.
Okay. And which day didn't you attend?
Did I not attend?
Yeah.
The Friday of the first week, because they had it on Friday because President's Day being Monday.
So, fair to say then that every single witness that's testified, you've been right back there and heard what they said?
Correct.
Every single medical record that has been asked about your mother, you've heard all the testimony with respect to the health care, passing, extubation, etc., correct?
To my mother?
I'm sorry.
You said,
To your loved one.
yes, I've heard what's been,
Right? You've heard it all. You've heard all the doctors and the nurses, right?
Yes.
Okay, and the experts, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that you could have heard the testimony from where you were sitting.
yes.
And I think, are you taking notes as well?
Actually, I am.
And your lawsuit is still pending, is it not?
Yes.
Object, Your Honor, it's not her lawsuit.
That's my dad's.
Well, she just adopted it in a way, so she's potential beneficiary, so let's move on.
Thank you. Let's go back through some of the things that you said on your direct. Let's first start with, let's go to, well, first, you're aware, are you not, that the course of the stay or the duration of the stay at the hospital was 5 days,
Yes,
from the 15th to the 20th?
correct.
And at any point in this time, have you reviewed the entire medical file?
Yes, I have.
You have?
Yes.
Chaplain notes?
There were no chaplain notes.
No chaplain notes that you would provide?
No.
Okay. Nursing progress notes?
Yes.
Doctor's progress notes?
Yes.
Discharge summary?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that ultimately you saw the death certificate in this case?
Yes.
And you saw the original then history and physical that was done on 11/15, 11/16. Do you remember reviewing those records?
Yes, and some errors.
I'm sorry?
Yes, and some errors.
Did I hear you correctly when you said on your direct, or was it in your deposition, that you don't have any formal medical training?
No, I don't.
So let's go back to your testimony about your mother's condition before she came to Mount Carmel West.
Okay.
And I know that you've reviewed the records, and so I'm just going to kind of go back through the course of treatment, if we can. You know then, and were you living with your mother and father at the time?
No.
How far geographically did you live apart?
Half a mile, I'm not, directions are not my thing.
And were you working at the time?
At what time?
During this time frame, 2018.
No.
And so how often would you see your mother and father?
Sometimes 2 to 3 times a week, because I babysat my grandchildren, and we would go there, so they would go do stuff with us, go to lunch with us.
And so,
And my mom and I would go shopping or go to lunch at least one day a week.
you know that a week prior to her getting to Mount Carmel on 11/15 of 2018, the dyspnea, the inability to breathe, had progressively been getting worse over that week period of time. You know that?
Correct.
And you also know, do you not, that she reported that she was unable to walk 5 feet without feeling out of breath.
Yes.
And she was given history and physical at the hospital.
I am, yes.
You reviewed those notes?
Yes.
And then as part of the history and physical, your mom would have surprised you to know, based on your review and knowing your mother, that she indicated she felt ill for at least a year, and it seemed to her that nobody is able to alleviate her discomfort.
Correct.
That's correct. So I want to talk about this pill bottle that you were shown. I'm not sure where it came from. Where did it come from?
Originally, Walmart.
No, how did it get over here in the hands of the prosecution?
Because my dad I gave it to them.
Okay. What day?
I don't remember.
Were you asked to write a slip where you would fill out a form as to you bringing something like a pill bottle to the prosecutors?
The reason how they ended up with it is in my mom's records upon admittance. They have down that she...
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. I want to follow up on some of my questions on the rec. And so I just want to know, were you ever asked when you delivered this to the prosecutor's office to fill out a slip of the date that you delivered it?
No.
And you brought this to the prosecutor's office, in the next building?
I don't recall, actually. And I had...
You don't recall even how it got to the prosecutors?
Yes, I gave it to the prosecutor, but I don't recall. It may have been here.
Like here during the trial?
I don't recall. Honest to God, I don't know when I gave it to him.
Did you give it to him recently?
Yes, actually I did, yes.
How recently?
Within a couple weeks.
So after the trial started again?
I truly, time-wise, honest to God, I don't remember. But that would have been the only time I'd been near her, so it had to have been.
Okay. So at some point during the trial, and you've known that this case is pending since you've known about, there was a call from Mount Carmel to your father, and then of course you're familiar with your own civil litigation, your family's civil litigation, correct? And so within the last couple of weeks, you've delivered this pill bottle to the state of Ohio. Where did you obtain the pill bottle?
My dad gave it to me we were
So your dad gave it to you.
getting rid of all of her medicines.
And that was where I was going next. When you just said to the jury, you were getting rid of all her medicines, plural,
Yes,
because your mother was taking a number of home medications before her admittance to Mount Carmel West, was she not?
yes,
Because she had had a lot of operations in the 10 years prior to coming to Mount Carmel. You talked about some of those.
yes, in her past, yes.
And she had a history with pain.
With her back, yes, and stomach. That's what she had said she had hurt for a year, was her stomach. And nobody...
Sorry, and this bottle that you delivered to the prosecutor's office in the last few weeks is empty?
Yes,
And the quantity is 60?
was, yes.
And the refill date on this, or was prescribed, and let me know if you need to see the bottle, was 11/1 of 2018. Does that sound right?
Yes,
And she came to Mount Carmel on 11/20.
11/15.
I'm sorry, 11/15. And as the bottle was found, as to your knowledge, it's empty.
No, I earlier just told you that he gave it to me to dispose of the medicine that was in there at our local police.
Disposing of her medication, so you got rid of the pills that were
Yes,
inside.
yes,
Okay, and this prescription is for morphine?
yes,
60, 30-day prescription?
yes.
And every month, are you familiar with your mother's prescription history with respect to morphine?
No,
Are you aware that 15, this is for 15, I want to make sure, 15 milligrams, correct?
correct,
60 pills for a 30-day script is twice a day.
correct.
So 30 milligrams of morphine a day. Are you familiar that that's 100 micrograms of fentanyl?
No,
And are you familiar with the fact that your mother had this particular script ongoing for every month, at least during the immediate year before she got to Mount Carmel?
she had just had that prescription, I think 18 months. I gave a copy of her prescription, a picture of that bottle to the prosecutor when this whole thing began.
So your testimony is she had had at least this morphine prescription twice a day, every month for 18 months?
As needed.
Well, she refilled the prescription every month, didn't she?
I don't know, I didn't refill it.
And you would agree with me that this was refilled on 11/1/2018?
If that's what the date says, yes.
So let's go back to, let me throw that. Let's go back to your testimony with respect to Dr. Husel. I think you told, well, one moment. I think you said you got back to the hospital at 9:15 on the 20th. Does that sound about right?
No, my dad called us at 9:15. We got there about 9:40, very quick, before 9:45. I know that for a fact.
And it's at that on 11:20, you are aware, are you not, that an arterial line insertion was placed in your mother at 9:30 p.m.?
I'm not sure what an interior line is.
An interior line, so a needle would be placed right here.
Okay.
In your mother. And so I was just listening to when you told the jurors that Dr. Husel was giving your mother medication. Would it surprise you to know at 9:30 on November 20th, Dr. Husel, as a life-saving measure, was putting an arterial line in your mother?
No.
Wouldn't surprise you to know he was doing that?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was surprising.
Did you review the operative and procedure document of your mother from 11/20 when you reviewed that entire medical file?
I'm not 100% sure what it was called. I can't recall what it was actually called.
Okay. Do you remember reviewing the records with respect to the arterial line that was placed in your mother by Dr. Husel, D.O. William S.?
I don't recall that.
You do.
I don't recall seeing anything here either. It was in her elbow.
Sure. Would it refresh your recollection?
No.
Sure. Approach.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I just told you
Put
what
a
I
proper
remember.
foundation.
So let's go to your understanding of the call that your father had with Mount Carmel West. The date of the call was what date?
I don't know. It was after Christmas. The first call.
The first call. Does December 27th of 2018 sound about right?
If you say so.
Well, no,
No, I don't know. He did not tell anybody in the family about that phone call until we found out everything in February.
And so was it your understanding from the phone call that your father had, I know you were asked this question about your understanding, was it your understanding that actually information was given that your mother had multiple health issues and that some patients can deteriorate quickly? Is that
No.
your understanding of what was said?
On the 27th?
Yes.
No.
When Mount Carmel called?
No.
Nor was it your understanding that, that as a result of that call, that your father was reinforced with the sentiment that the medication was given only after it was decided by the family that she needed comfort care
No.
and was dying.
No.
You talked about learning about your mother's MRSA and pneumonia. I just want to make sure that I understand your testimony here today. You have given a deposition, correct?
Correct.
And you understand that that was also under oath, just
Correct.
like you are here today. Did you review that deposition in advance of your testimony here today?
Yes.
With respect to your mother and her wishes with being on a ventilator or not, you were asked about that in your deposition, and you indicated, did you not, her brother had been on a ventilator and she didn't want to be like he was.
Left alive on a ventilator for a long period of time.
That was your answer, was it not? She didn't want to be
Yes.
like he was. And then, I'm sorry, going back to the MRSA and the pneumonia, I thought that I heard on direct that you had indicated the pneumonia was in one lung. Was it that you told the jury the right lung?
I can't recall which lung, but we were told it was in one lung.
So, and I know you reviewed the medical record, so it would surprise you to know then that actually the pneumonia was in both lungs and in all lobes, upper, lower, middle of each lung.
As she was in there longer, and originally we were told it was in one lung.
Okay, so then
Her
now,
question is, would you be surprised?
Yes, I'd be very surprised.
you would, even after reviewing the medical
Yes.
records? Okay, and that wasn't information, I think you told the jurors that you weren't even told about the MRSA until the day she passed, after she had been at the hospital for 5 days?
Correct. That morning.
So let's just go through, because your mother was there for 5 days, right?
Correct.
I want to go through the doctors that saw your mother. 4 internal medicine doctors. You mentioned Dr. Deb, correct?
Yes.
There was Dr. Shilpa Bethany.
We don't know. The only doctor we ever had contact with, other than Dr. Husel, was Dr. Deb.
Okay, so I just, for sake of completeness, 4 internal medicines, Dr. Deb you had contact with, correct?
No.
Oh, no contact with Dr. Deb.
We had no contact with any other doctor than the 2 I've named. No other doctor ever spoke to us.
I'm sorry, so Dr. Husel, and who's the other doctor?
Her Deborah,
Okay, so you called her Dr. Deb, and so I was adopting that.
I apologize. Her last name, it starts with a W. I don't know how to.
Sure. So Dr. Genevieve Deichel, no contact. The Dr. Keeble that did the history and physical and was the no contact, correct? Then there was 3 cardiologists that saw your mother, Dr. Anthony, Dr. Wace, Dr. Comfort, no contact with any of
Never.
those cardiologists. There was 2 pulmonologists, Dr. Mahoney and Ryan Westman, no contact with either of those pulmonologists.
Never.
Then there was a gastrointestinal doctor, because your mother had those stomach pains, Dr. John Ward, no contact with Dr. John Ward.
My daughter had contact with him.
And then, but not you.
No.
And then, of course, your mother was both on the ER and in the ICU.
I'm sorry?
Your mother was on multiple floors. You indicated she
Yes.
changed rooms.
ER, 3rd floor, and ICU.
And would you agree that at each floor, in each room that she was in, there were also nurses assigned to her care?
Yes.
And there was also charge nurses, were you aware, on the floors of where she was being cared for?
Not that I was aware of.
And did you have, according to your testimony, is there any contact with any spiritual care or chaplains that worked within the hospital?
Absolutely not. After we made the decision to have the vent taken away because we didn't want my mom to be a vegetable and a brain dead, there was a lady standing in the opening of the ICU room, asked if we wanted to have our pastor called, and we said no since my mom was already gone.
So the first time your testimony is that you had any involvement with a chaplain in those 5 days was after your mother had passed?
Correct. Never. No, we didn't have involvement with a chaplain then.
Oh, even then?
No, never.
One moment, Your Honor. Dr. Deb, I think is
Deborah.
and note in her report that she called the family with updates every day. Would that be inaccurate?
No.
No, that would not.
No, that was not.
Would a spiritual care note indicating on 11/20 that 90 minutes of end-of-life issues was spent with large, loving family, that would be incorrect?
That is in a record?
Would that be incorrect? or-
Absolutely, yes, incorrect.
And a further spiritual care provider note that patient's family has been told she probably won't survive the night, large loving family, at 11/20, 22:49 when it's entered. that would be incorrect as well.
Absolutely. My mom is a very spiritual person. She read the Bible every day. That would have been nice, but no, it
And
didn't happen.
then at 23:40, a second note that 75 minutes of death support was offered to the family, and that's by a different spiritual care provider. That would have been an inaccurate note as well.
Absolutely, yes. Wow.
I assume, one moment, I have one more question. I assume that you had the opportunity to review your mother's obituary.
I wrote my mother's obituary.
Did. And so then you know that the language in your mother's obituary, after the decision had been made to palliatively extubate her and she had passed, the obituary reads that the doors open the doors to heaven and she is now happy and free of pain. That's what the obituary reads.
Okay, I don't recall that, but if you're saying it does, my mom was not afraid of death because she knew the Lord.
Nothing further.
Ms. Grubb?
Thank you.
Ms. Menashe asked you whether or not you felt that your mom had told someone that she felt ill for a year. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
What was your opinion of your mother's situation physically for the year preceding her hospitalization?
She had had,
Objection relevant.
Sustained. Well, for other reasons, sustained.
Do you know of any illness that your mother was complaining about prior to this illness?
diverticulitis.
Okay, nothing further. Thank you.
Hold on, before we step her off, council sidebar. Mayor, look here and talk to him. We'll be sending him out here in a minute. second get out there, you can go ahead and step down, man.
Thank you.
We're on break.
Thank you, Judge.
I gotta switch up bailiffs, so we're gonna try to get started a little before 3. And I imagine, will your next witness take up the rest of the day, or?
Well, she'll take up the rest of the day, and that she's our
be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue on with the witnesses. Mr. Zion, call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Janet Watkins to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, go ahead and have a seat there. Make yourself comfortable. Okay, now you have that mic there in front of you. You seem a little soft-spoken, so you're going to have to give me a little bite.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So start out by stating your name and then spelling it for the benefit of the court reporter.
Janet Louise Watkins, Jantwatkins.
Okay. They need a little bit more. Okay? Pretend you're yelling at me. Okay? Just belt it out. Okay?
Okay.
We all want to hear it.
All right.
Mr. Zion.
Good afternoon, Miss Watkins. Can you tell the jury a little bit about yourself? Are you married?
Yes, I'm married
All right. How long have you been married?
to my second husband, 29 years,
All right. And where did you grow up?
Grove City, Ohio.
All right. At any point in your life, did you become familiar with a woman named Rebecca Walls?
Yes, I did.
And how did you meet Miss Walls? And can you tell the jury about your relationship with Miss Walls?
We met at church, at Southside Church of Christ in Columbus, and become very good Christian friends. And I was friends with her for about 30 years.
All right. Talk about what, if anything, you would do with Miss Walls as part of your friendship with her for 30 years.
We went to different ladies' meetings, attended church together, went out to eat. I was in her home several times. And also, at the time that her mother took sick, I helped her take care of her, and also her father before he died.
All right. After her mother passed, did Miss Walls actually move in, or did her dad move in with her?
Yes, her dad moved in with her.
All right.
Her mom and dad were divorced. And then she promised her mother that she would take care of her dad, so she moved him in with her.
Okay. And did you help Miss Walls as she took care of her father?
Yes, I did.
And did her father eventually pass as well?
Yes, he did.
All right. Back in November of 2018, did you have any contact with Miss Walls?
Oh, yeah, I did clear up till that time.
All right.
Yes, I did.
At some point, did you become concerned about her health?
Yes, I took her to the doctor quite frequently. And we would, like go out to lunch and stuff afterwards. But yes, I came very concerned because she just wasn't getting along well, and she had swelling in her legs and feet. And I convinced her to go back to the doctor.
Did your friend eventually do that?
Yes, we did.
Tell the jury about that.
I took her to the doctor, and several times, but this particular time, he said that she needed to have a heart catheterization because he thought maybe she was going to be having congested heart failure.
What happened next?
I took her to Mount Carmel West. He asked me to take her over there. I took her to Mount Carmel West, and she was admitted. And then that was on the 12th of November. The 13th and 14th, they ran like an echogram and some other tests, blood tests and stuff, and then took her for the heart catheterization on November the 15th.
All right. Did your friend have any concerns about having this heart catheterization?
Yes, she did. She talked with her doctors and stuff and talked with me, but they said until they found out what was wrong with her heart to fix it, then, she wasn't going to get any better probably.
How old was your friend?
I would say 74.
Okay.
I'm not remember.
To your knowledge, did your friend want to keep living?
Oh, yes, she did, very much.
All right. Was she willing to go through this heart catheterization so that she could keep living?
Yes, yes.
All right. Did you two talk about that before the procedure?
Yes, we did.
And what date was this again?
The heart cath was November the 15th.
All right. And that is 2018?
Yes, sir.
Before we go on, I'm going to show you what's been identified as State's Exhibit 13A. Do you recognize what's depicted in 13A?
Yes, I do.
And what is that, please?
That's Rebecca Walls, my friend.
All right. And the heart catheterization was on what day?
November the 15th.
What happened next? Did you stay with her at the hospital?
Yes, I did. And my husband and I both were there, and we got to go back and see her in the recovery. And they said she had to lay still for about 8 hours because she had the heart cath in her groin. And we had been there most of the day. So she said, I might as well go home and come back and see her the next day because we were all tired and she had to lay still. So then after the 8 hours, they would put her in a room.
What happened next?
They called me and said that she had bled out. I presume that was from where they did the heart cath.
Okay.
And that they had to take her and put her in ICU.
All right. What happened next?
I went to see her, and when I went to see her right away, they had already put the ventilator in, and I did not get to talk to her anymore after that.
Okay. Do you remember what day that was?
When I went back to see her was the 16th of November.
All right. Can you describe what condition you observed her in when you went to go see her on the 16th of November?
Well, they had her, hooked to IV and heart monitor and the ventilator. She wasn't moving. I tried to speak with her, and there was no movement or anything whatsoever. So I questioned the doctor at that time and asked if she was, sedated, and they said yes, she had been sedated. So I never got to have any more communication with her.
Did she appear to be in any pain or discomfort or experiencing anxiety at that point?
No, very quiet.
What happened next?
They called me and said that her kidneys had failed and they needed to put her on a dialysis. And I had medical power of attorney, so I had to give the kidney doctor permission to put her on the dialysis.
Did she have any other family, children, brother, sister? I mean, you said her mom and dad had passed. Did she have anybody else in her life that would have been a closer relative?
She had some cousins, but at the time, before the heart cath, we had talked about that, and I told her that I needed a paper sign that I could go in her house because she wanted me to go get her checkbook and stuff so we could write checks. And I told her that I probably needed a paper sign because of the cousins that she had. And she said, they don't care about me, and you're the only one I have.
So you're not family, but you're her family.
Christian family.
So what happened next?
They left her on the kidney dialysis for a day and a half. And when I went back to see her on Saturday, they said that the kidney dialysis was not working.
What happened next?
I visited with her all day Saturday, still no movement or anything, and I went home, and at that time, at church, my husband had a seizure, and I had to take him to the emergency room, so I did not get back up there on Sunday.
Okay. So your husband the next day on Sunday, when you were at church, had a seizure?
Yes, sir.
What happened next?
I had a code number to call the doctor in the intensive care, or intensive care, to check on her. So I called the number about 9:30, 10 o'clock Sunday evening, and Dr. Husel came to the phone and said that he was going to call me, that I should get to the hospital right away, that she was failing.
So tell us about, you said you had a code number. What does that mean, just so the jury understands?
The hospital gives you a code number, so, a lot of people can't call and check on your loved ones or whatever, and I was the one that was allowed to check on her through the hospital.
So they could talk about confidential medical stuff
Yes,
with you?
yes, about medical things.
Okay. And so how did you know this was Dr. Husel you were speaking to? Did he identify himself?
Yes, he did.
All right. So this is Sunday evening after, how's your husband doing? He had that seizure earlier that day?
Yeah, he had a stroke, and he has seizures, and it caused him to be blind, and we're having a real hard time right now.
I'm sorry to hear about that. So back when this happened, that Sunday night when you had called to check on your friend Rebecca, that was the same day that your husband had had that seizure at church?
Yes, I had to get somebody to stay with him before I could leave to go to the hospital, but I did get my sister, and I left right away for the hospital.
Okay. What time do you think you got to the hospital?
It was about 11:30.
What happened next?
Dr. Husel met me in the room and said I had two choices. I could either leave her the way she was, which I knew she did not want to be, or we could pull the ventilator and let her go peacefully.
Were you given any hope that she could recover?
No.
What happened next?
They came in and took out the dialysis machine, and then Dr. Husel asked me to leave the room.
Well, did you think about the choice? Did you pray about the choice
Oh,
that he
yes,
gave you?
I thought about it for about an hour and prayed about it, and knew that she did not want to live the way she was. And so I decided at that time to have the ventilator pulled.
Okay. So you had had conversations with your friend about her end-of-life wishes?
Yes, I did. Before the heart catheterization, she had signed some papers, and when I went to the hospital that morning, she said, I have left everything to you. And I said, what? And she said, the papers are all signed. Well, when I picked up the papers, it was medical power of attorney that she had signed. And I still do believe that she thought that she gave me the power of attorney for everything.
Okay.
But I told her, I said, it's just power of attorney for medical. And she said, well, she wanted to sign a paper for non-life supports. But we did not get a chance to get that done before they took her for her heart cath.
All right. Were you aware of whether Mrs. Watkins, whether Miss Walls would want to be permanently on a ventilator in a vegetative or coma state?
I know she would not.
Okay.
She told me that.
And that was your understanding, those were your two choices, leave her like that till she dies, or take her off so she can pass peacefully?
Right, yes.
What decision did you make for your friend?
After thinking about it and praying about it for about an hour, I decided I knew she did not want to live the way she was, and decided to have the ventilator pulled.
Okay. What happened next?
I stepped out in the hallway, and then Dr. Husel came back and told me I could go back in the room with her. And I went back in the room. I felt at that time that she was already gone. But, you know, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, so I don't know for sure, but there was no way to tell about her heart or her breathing because all the things had been taken off of her. The monitors, the heart monitor and all that was gone.
What happened next?
I walked up to the bed beside of her, and of course there was no motion or anything. I mean, she just, you know, just laid there, and that's another reason I thought she was already gone. And I just visited with her for a few minutes, and I can't remember if they came back in and told me she was already gone. I can't remember. But I stayed there for probably about a half hour, and then I left the hospital.
At any point were you told that she would be given pain medications or benzodiazepines for pain and anxiety.
They never mentioned the medication. They just said that they would give her something so that they could pull the ventilator, but I did not know what they had given her.
Did your friend at any point during this visit appear to be in pain or experiencing anxiety from what you saw prior to her having the ventilator pulled?
No.
Do you know whether or not it was your friend's wishes, your friend Rebecca Wall's wishes, to experience a natural death?
I do know that. She told me.
Did she want to have a natural death?
A natural death.
All right. At some point, did you leave the hospital that night?
Pardon me?
At some point, did you leave the hospital that night?
Yes, I did.
All right. At some point later, maybe a month or so later, maybe a little bit longer than a month, were you contacted by the hospital regarding the death of your friend Rebecca Wallace?
Yes. It was about a month. They contacted me and told me that she had...
Without telling us what they told you, you were contacted about her death?
Yes, I was.
All right. And thereafter, were you contacted by the police, and did you speak with the police about the death of your friend Rebecca Wallace?
Yes, I did.
And have you, has her power of attorney on behalf of her estate, filed or at some point involved in civil litigation regarding your friend's death?
Yes.
All right. And finally, is it your belief that your friend experienced a natural death?
Objection, Your Honor, as to relevance.
Let's lay a little bit in there, because you're asking her to opine about a natural death, so
Based on the information you have today, is it your belief that your friend's wish to have a natural death, do you believe, based on what you know today, that your friend experienced a natural death?
Objection, Your Honor.
okay. Let's go aside.
Ms. Schaefer?
Objection sustained.
So
Next
you were able,
question.
may I continue, Judge?
Yes.
You were able to observe your friend prior to the ventilator being pulled?
Yes,
You've already testified about the condition you observed her in. At any point, did you or did you hear anybody request that she be given pain medication for anything that you or anyone else there observed?
no,
At any point, did you or did you hear anybody else request that she be given anxiety medicine based on anything you or anyone else observed?
no,
And at any point, did anyone explain to you the types and the amounts of medicine they would give her when they pulled out the ventilator?
no, sir.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Diane Menashe on behalf of Dr. William Husel. Nice to meet you. Just a few questions.
Okay.
Not as mean as you've been told. Or at least I'll try. I know, just pulling a piece of paper, but
Would it surprise you to know that the code that you talked about is actually a code that allows you to call a phone that's managed by the nurses?
I'm not sure.
So let's just talk about the code.
Okay.
You were provided with a set of numbers that you could call into the hospital.
Right.
And the set of numbers were used as identifiers, that if you gave those numbers, then the hospital could release otherwise privileged information to you.
Right.
And I know you talked about using the code, and you mentioned that you believed that Dr. Husel was the one that had answered the phone. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, I do remember saying that.
Let's go prior to you making that call.
Okay.
If you remember, had you ever spoken to Dr. Husel up until that point?
No.
So fair to say, when you called, at the moment you called, you didn't know what Dr. Husel's voice sounded like at that time.
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
Okay. And I just asked the name, but does the name Jordan Blair sound familiar to you as a nurse that you might have spoken to?
I know there was a nurse, a male nurse that worked in the room with us, but I do not remember what his name was.
But you used the code,
Yes.
and you called the number that you were provided on the ICU floor. Is that right?
Right.
And someone spoke to you on the phone after you provided the code and said you should get down here, things don't look good. Does that sound about right?
Well,
Yeah, tell me,
okay, as I remember now, I believe someone else answered the phone. I didn't mean Dr. Husel did. And they said that Dr. Husel wanted to speak with me. So he came to the phone. And that's when he told me that he was going to call me and tell me to get down there because she was declining.
okay. So someone other than Dr. Husel answered the phone, as you're now remembering this?
Yes, prior to that.
And then Dr. Husel got on the phone and said, oh, I was going to call you.
Yes.
And then you, after you got coverage for your husband, you were able to come down to the hospital.
Yes.
And that's when you testified that Dr. Husel had indicated to you during that conversation that Rebecca wasn't going to get any better.
Right.
And do you remember giving a police interview in January of 2019 in this case?
Yes, I do.
And do you remember telling the police that when Dr. Husel talked to you about Rebecca's condition, that you said you knew that she wasn't going to get any better?
Well, I knew from what he was saying that she wasn't going to get any better.
Okay, well, let's go back. You had, over the course of those days, had you not, been privy to a number of conversations with the doctors about Rebecca's kidneys.
Yes.
And we just knew from your testimony that the first time you talked to Dr. Husel was on that phone call, according to your testimony, right?
Right.
I want to talk about all of the days before that phone call, all the interaction you had with the doctor about the heart cath. Remember those conversations?
Right.
Remember the conversations about the aortic valve, she was too sick for it to even be replaced, right?
I'm not sure about being replaced because they said until they did the heart cath, we could not know what to do with the heart.
Okay, and you approved the heart cath, is that right?
Yes, I did.
And you mentioned on direct that dialysis, you know that dialysis was not successful.
Right.
And her kidneys, as you told the police, that her kidneys were pretty much gone. Do you remember telling the police that you had known that?
At the time before she went to surgery, I believe the kidney doctor said that she was in stage 3.
Stage 3 or stage 4, do you remember telling the police? And I know it's been time, I just asked you.
I'm not real sure.
Okay. But it wouldn't surprise you to know that you told the police that you believed her kidneys were pretty much gone, and then separate from the kidneys, her lungs weren't getting any better. That you had told the police you knew that.
That her lungs?
That's right.
Yeah, she was having trouble breathing. Yes.
And in fact, before she got to Mount Carmel West, as her friend, hadn't you for several days told her, you have got to go to the doctor?
Yes.
You had told her, please call, because as her friend, hadn't you been really concerned about her health?
Right.
And please call the doctor, and then we're all adults. And then Rebecca, for whatever reason, didn't call the doctor the next day. It didn't seem to improve, and you said, Rebecca, please call the doctor,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then finally, you just had to take her.
Yeah, well, she did call and make the appointment, and I took her.
And so you had seen this progression before she went to Mount Carmel of some health conditions that you were concerned about.
Right.
And I presume, tell me if I'm wrong, but Rebecca entrusted you with the decision to make about her living will because you were her very good friend.
She didn't get a chance to make out the living will.
Oh, she gave you the power of attorney,
Yeah, medical.
medical power of attorney. And so you were the one that made the decision
For
for her
the,
palliative extubation.
yes,
And you thought about it and prayed on it for an hour, you said?
about an hour.
And is it right to say that during that hour you thought about how she had communicated to you her wish that she did not want to live on a ventilator?
Yes,
She did not want to be on a ventilator.
right.
And what you were told at the hospital by Dr. Husel and by the nurses, I remember you telling the police, is it true that you said they said she would be comfortable?
Made comfortable, you mean?
Yes, after she was extubated, she would be comfortable.
I think so, I believe so.
Thank you, nothing further.
Redirect.
You were told she would be made comfortable? Is that what that last question was, an answer?
After they pulled the ventilator? Yes, that's what they were supposed to make her comfortable.
At any point, did you tell them to just put your friend down as quickly as possible?
No, I did
Objection, Your
not.
Honor.
That's what this
I'm
case
not
is about?
permitted.
Did you ask him that?
No, I did not.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, you may step down. You're done. You can step down. Just hold on for a second. It's my understanding that we got through the witnesses quicker than we thought.
Yes, Judge.
Okay, so you have no more witnesses today?
Not today.
Trying to keep within my schedule. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll send you home early. Whoever's taking the trip today, be safe. Okay? Whoever's helping, thank you. You guys have a great weekend. We'll start at 9 o'clock on Monday. Be safe. And remember what we talked about 2 days ago? If anybody comes down with symptoms, you give David a call. Okay? Okay, with that, remember the admonitions? Ladies and gentlemen, you may rise. Have a great weekend. Just relax right there. Let them get through first. You're good. They're very polite to each other, so. Safe travels to whoever. Mr. Zion?
Sir.
Everybody can be relaxed and be seated. Anything for the record?
Not from the state, Judge.
Okay, state, defense?
No, Your Honor. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Monday, 9 o'clock.
Judge, there might be something if I have a minute.
Okay.
I'm trying to get some information.
What? What are we doing? What's up?